Los Angeles, September 2013. In the Silver Lake neighborhood, where hipster coffee shops sit next to old bungalows, time flows at its own pace. For 18-year-old Samantha Wells, this city is not just a backdrop, but an endless source of inspiration. She sees beauty where others look away, in rusty fire escapes, in the geometry of shadows under overpasses, in the faces of tired workers at bus stops. Samantha's mornings begin the same way every day, with a jog and a check of the settings on her mirror camera, an old but reliable Canon that she bought with money she earned working in a cafe over the summer. Samantha is not your typical California cover girl. There is a certain sharpness about her, an inner strength hidden behind a mane of dark hair and an attentive, searching gaze. She doesn't want to be a model. She wants to be the one who watches. That morning, the kitchen in their small rented house was filled with the smell of burnt toast and strong coffee. Jessica Wells, Samantha's mother, was already up. At 40, Jessica looks tired, but not broken. Working as an administrator at the Standard Hotel in the city center is exhausting. Shifts often run late, and tips leave much to be desired. But Jessica perseveres for her daughter's sake. Their relationship is a complex dance of closeness and inevitable separation. "Are you going to the industrial zone again?" Jessica asks, noticing Samantha packing spare lenses into her backpack. Her voice has the familiar anxiety that has become the background noise of their lives. "Mom, it's for my portfolio. The theme is industrial loneliness. I need textures, concrete, abandoned warehouses," Samantha replies, trying to speak lightly so as not to provoke an argument. "I won't go anywhere where there are danger signs." "Sam, I have a bad feeling about this. Just stay in touch, okay? And don't go there alone if possible. Maybe ask one of your friends to come with you?" Samantha just nods briefly, kisses her mother on the cheek, and runs out of the house. She doesn't tell her mother the truth. She has no one to ask. Her school friends have scattered to different colleges, and the only person who used to go everywhere with her is now the reason she looks over her shoulder on the streets. Tyler Banks. 19 years old, explosive temper, and absolutely unable to take no for an answer. Their romance lasted 2 years and ended a month ago when Samantha realized that his jealousy was stifling her ambitions. Tyler works as a pizza delivery guy, racing around the neighborhood in his beat-up Honda Civic with a loud exhaust pipe. He considers the breakup a temporary mistake, a misunderstanding that needs to be corrected with persistence. That day, around lunchtime, Samantha went to a local photo lab to pick up her developed film. She still loved shooting on film for the soul. When she stepped outside, squinting in the bright sun, a familiar car blocked her path. Tyler jumped out from behind the wheel without even turning off the engine. He was wearing his pizza delivery uniform, his face red, his eyes darting around. "You're not answering my messages, Sam," he said, not asking, but accusing. "Because we have nothing to talk about, Tyler." "I asked you to leave me alone." Samantha gripped her camera strap tighter, instinctively taking a step back, closer to the shop window where there were people. "I just want to talk. I saw you hanging out with those art school jerks again. Are they messing with your head? You think you're better than me now?" "It's not about who's better. It's about you acting like a psychopath. Go away, Tyler, or I'll go back inside and call the police." Tyler froze. For a second, his eyes flashed, not with anger, but with childish hurt, mixed with despair. He slammed his fist on the roof of his car, causing passers-by to turn around. "You'll regret this, Sam. You'll realize that no one will ever love you the way I do," he said, getting into his car and driving off with a screech of tires. Samantha exhaled, feeling her hands tremble. It was a scene, a loud, public scene. Witnesses saw an aggressive guy and a frightened girl. At that moment, it seemed like just an unpleasant incident, part of the drama of a breakup. No one knew how ominous those words would sound in police reports a few months later. To calm down, Samantha decided to stop by her old school. She needed advice, and she needed someone adult, but not her mother, who would immediately start panicking. She needed Mr. Miller. Greg Miller, the school counselor and psychologist, had been working at Silver Lake High for 10 years. 38 years old, always neatly dressed, soft-spoken, wearing thin-rimmed glasses. He was the kind of teacher you could trust with your secrets. He never judged, always listened. For Samantha, who grew up without a father, Greg became a mentor. It was he who noticed her talent for photography and convinced her to apply for a grant. The school was already empty after classes, and the hallways smelled of floor mastic and dust. Mr. Miller's office door was ajar. He was sitting at his desk, sorting through some papers. When he saw Samantha, he smiled sincerely, took off his glasses, and rubbed his nose. Samantha Wells, a rare visitor now that all roads are open to you. His voice sounded soothing. Samantha sat down in the chair opposite him, feeling the tension from her meeting with Tyler ease. She told him about her plans for a series of photographs, her mother's fears, and, after some hesitation, Tyler's harassment. Greg listened attentively, tilting his head slightly. He didn't interrupt, only nodding occasionally. Tyler is a boy who doesn't know how to control his emotions, Greg said, his tone even and analytical. But don't let his shadow block your light, Sam. You're doing important work. Your abandoned city project has tremendous potential. He stood up, walked over to the bookcase, and pulled out a heavy album of photographs of old Los Angeles. I found something for you here. I thought it might be useful for inspiration before tomorrow's shoot. You're going to the old water treatment plant area in Burbank, right? Samantha was surprised. I didn't say that's where I was going. Greg paused for a second, but then smiled gently. You mentioned it last month when we were discussing concrete textures. I remembered. I have a good memory for things that are important to my students. He handed her the book. Their fingers touched. Greg's hand was dry and warm. It's quiet there now, he continued. Perfect light in the afternoon. But be careful. Art requires courage, but not recklessness. Thank you, Mr. Miller. You're the only one who really understands me, Samantha said, pressing the book to her chest. Just Greg, Sam. You're not a schoolgirl anymore. We're creative colleagues now, you could say. Samantha left school feeling elated. Her conversation with Greg had restored her confidence. She felt special, chosen. A mature, intelligent man believed in her, saw her as a person. It was intoxicating. She didn't notice Greg walking over to the window of his office and watching her for a long time until her figure disappeared around the corner. He didn't return to his papers. Instead, he opened the bottom drawer of his desk, where a neatly folded map of the city's old communications network lay, and traced his finger along the route leading to Burbank. His face was expressionless, showing only the cold concentration of a chess player considering his next move. The evening passed quietly. Samantha sorted through her equipment, cleaned her lenses, and charged her batteries. Jessica made dinner, and they sat in front of the TV watching some silly show. The tension of the morning had eased. I'm sorry I pressured you this morning, Jessica said, putting down the remote. I just want you to be safe. You're all I have. I know, Mom. I'll be careful. I promise, Samantha said, resting her head on her mother's shoulder. It was a moment of absolute peace, an illusion of normality. The room was cozy and bright. Cicadas chirped outside the window, and the noise of the big city seemed like a distant surf. Samantha went into her room and looked at the board above the table, where her best photos and a map of the city with marked points hung. She circled the area in Burbank with a red marker. Tomorrow, she thought. Tomorrow I'll take a picture that will change everything. She lay down in bed, checking her phone. One new message from Tyler. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to scare you. I just can't live without you. And one message from an unknown number, just a camera emoji. She decided it was one of the guys from her photography class and fell asleep with a smile. The world around her was familiar, understandable, and, as she thought, safe. She didn't know that the mechanisms that would destroy this life had already been set in motion. She didn't know that the bright streak would end here, in this quiet bedroom, and that she would meet tomorrow's sunset in a completely different world. October 12, 2013 began with a deceptive serenity. Los Angeles woke up to a gray sky that promised another hot Indian summer day. It was 8:15 a.m. when Jessica Wells, finishing her coffee on the go, called out to her daughter, "Don't forget to charge your phone." Samantha, chewing an apple and looking at Google Maps on her laptop, just waved her hand. It was the last time Jessica saw her daughter. The moment is frozen in her mother's memory like a photograph. Samantha's sleep-tousled hair, her old rock band t-shirt, and the sunbeam falling on the kitchen table. At 10:00 a.m., Samantha rolled her bike out of the garage. Her destination was an old water distribution station on the border of Burbank and Glendale, a place Greg described as an industrial temple. The backpack with the camera weighed down her shoulders, but Samantha felt a rush of adrenaline. She wanted to prove to everyone, and above all to herself, that she was capable of a serious project. Samantha stopped at a 24-hour store on Sunset Boulevard to buy water and batteries. Security cameras recorded her leaving the store, and a guy in a cap immediately ran up to her. It was Tyler. The grainy footage shows him grabbing her bike handlebar, blocking her path. Their conversation was inaudible, but their body language spoke of conflict. Tyler gestured wildly, pointing his finger, while Samantha shook her head, trying to pull away. A witness, a hot dog vendor across the street, later told the police, "The guy looked agitated. He was shouting something like, 'You don't understand what you're getting yourself into,' or 'You can't go there.' The girl looked scared. She literally yanked the steering wheel and drove off at a red light to get away from him." Tyler remained standing on the sidewalk, watching her go, then turned sharply and walked to his car, parked around the corner. At 12:45 p.m., Samantha was already far from the city center, approaching the industrial zone. The landscape was changing. Palm trees and shop windows gave way to concrete fences, warehouses, and power lines. There were fewer cars and almost no pedestrians. At 1:15 p.m., Samantha's phone rang. Call details would later show an incoming call from Greg Miller. The conversation lasted 3 minutes. "Sam, are you there yet?" Greg's voice on the line sounded soft, with a hint of professional concern. "Almost, Greg. I've crossed the old railroad bridge. It's kind of creepy here, to be honest." Not a soul in sight. "That's exactly what you need for the atmosphere," he reassured her. "Listen, there's a side entrance north of the main gate. The gate is usually open. The light there shines through the roof grates, creating a cage effect. Try to capture that." "Got it, north entrance." "Thanks, Greg. You're the best navigator." "I'm just concerned about safety. Don't stay out after dark. And Sam, if you see anyone strange, leave immediately." "Of course. It's just me and the concrete here." Samantha hung up, feeling grateful. It didn't occur to her to wonder how the school psychologist knew such details about the abandoned facility or why he called just as she was approaching the cell phone dead zone. Around 3 p.m., Samantha arrived at her destination. The sun was beginning to set, painting the concrete walls orange. She locked her bike to a pole by the road and entered the station grounds through a hole in the fence. It was here, amid the silence and dust, that Samantha had a feeling that would later be called the sixth sense of a victim, the feeling of a gaze piercing the back of her neck. She turned around several times, pointing her camera lens at the empty window openings using the zoom-like binoculars. No one, just the wind blowing trash around. She took a series of pictures. One of them, later recovered by experts from a damaged memory card, captured something strange at the edge of the frame. Part of the bumper of a dark sedan visible from around the corner of the warehouse. An ordinary, unremarkable car. There are thousands of them in Los Angeles. At 4:30 p.m., Samantha decided it was time to go back. The shadows were getting long and black. She walked quickly to the road where she had left her bike. Her anxiety was growing. She thought she heard footsteps, the rhythmic crunch of gravel that stopped when she stopped. "Hey, is anyone there?" she called out. Her voice cracked. Silence. She was almost running. When she reached the road, she was relieved to see her bike, but as soon as she bent down to unlock it, a car slowed down slowly beside her. It was the same dark sedan. The passenger side window slid down smoothly. Samantha straightened up, her heart pounding in her throat. She recognized the driver. For a second, her fear gave way to surprise and relief. "Oh my God, you scared me. What are you doing here?" she asked, taking a step toward the car. The man behind the wheel smiled. It wasn't the kind smile she knew. "Get in, Sam. We need to talk about your future." That was the last thing she heard while she was free. At 7 p.m., Jessica returned home. The house was dark. "Sam?" she called, dropping her keys on the nightstand. Silence. Usually at this time, music or the sound of laptop keys would be coming from her daughter's room. Jessica peeked into the bedroom. The bed was made. The backpack was gone. "Out with friends," Jessica thought irritably. "Or she's made up with that idiot Tyler again." She dialed her daughter's number. "The subscriber is temporarily unavailable." Irritation began to give way to concern. At 8:30 p.m., her concern turned to panic. Jessica called Samantha's best friend, Chloe. "No, Mrs. Wells, I haven't seen her since graduation. We didn't make any plans." At 9:15 p.m., Jessica swallowed her pride and dialed Tyler's number. He didn't answer right away, and his voice sounded drunk and angry. "What do you want?" "Where's Samantha, Tyler? If she's with you—" "Go to hell," he interrupted. "She made it clear she doesn't want to see me. I've been home all evening, drinking beer alone, thanks to your daughter for my broken heart." He hung up. But Jessica heard not only anger in his voice, but also something like fear. Or was it just her imagination? At 10 p.m., Jessica couldn't wait any longer. She got in her car and drove along the route Samantha had shown her on the map that morning. Burbank, the industrial zone. The city looked hostile at night. The streets were empty. Jessica drove slowly, peering at the roadside, her headlights picking out trash cans and bushes in the darkness. "Please, just be visiting someone. Please, just let your phone be dead," she whispered like a mantra. At 11:40 p.m., on a deserted stretch of road near an old water treatment plant, the headlights reflected off something metallic in the ditch. Jessica slammed on the brakes. Her heart skipped a beat. She ran out of the car without turning off the engine. In the headlights, a bicycle lay in the tall, dry grass. The front wheel was bent, as if from an impact. Jessica slid down the embankment. "Sam! Samantha!" A sneaker lay next to the bicycle. One, and a little further away, a camera. The body was broken. The back cover had flown off, exposing the inside of the device. Jessica grabbed the camera, looking around. There was complete, ringing darkness all around her. Not a soul in sight. Only the distant hum of the highway and the chirping of insects. The scream that escaped her throat was inhuman. It was the scream of a mother who realized that the worst had already happened. 10 minutes later, the silence of the industrial zone was broken by the wail of sirens. Red and blue flashes danced on the concrete walls of the warehouses, illuminating the figure of a woman kneeling by the road and clutching the broken camera to her chest. A police radio crackled. "Dispatcher, we have a code 459. Possible kidnapping. Personal belongings found. Victim missing. I repeat, victim is missing. Samantha Wells is officially missing." A year of silence was beginning. October 2014. Los Angeles was once again sweltering in the heat, but for Jessica Wells, the world had turned gray and cold exactly 12 months ago, the anniversary of her disappearance. The phrase was on every local news broadcast. Reporters had once again set up camp on the lawn in front of her house, eager for fresh tears. But there were no tears left, Only emptiness remained, filled with the silence of a house where no one slammed doors or laughed on the phone. At the police station, Detective Marcus Holloway sat in front of a board of evidence that his colleagues jokingly called the Wailing Wall. A photograph of Samantha, alive, smiling, was in the center. Red threads radiated from it, but they all ended abruptly. "It's been a year, Mark. We're going nowhere," said the lieutenant, passing by and throwing a folder on the table. "The case is going cold." Holloway rubbed his tired eyes. He hated this moment. "We know it was the guy," he growled. "Tyler Banks. He had a motive, he had aggression, he was there." "But we have nothing but the video of the argument outside the store," the lieutenant reminded him. "There's no hair, no DNA, no signs of a struggle in his car. His phone bill is clean. The tires didn't match the ones on the gravel. If we arrest him now, the lawyer will tear us apart in court, and the guy will walk free forever." Holloway knew it was true, but he also knew that the law and justice were two different things. Tyler Banks was no longer delivering pizza. He was fired a week after Sam disappeared due to public pressure. Who would want to take food from the hands of a potential murderer? Now he worked as a night cleaner in a warehouse, lived in a cheap motel, and tried not to raise his eyes. The city had sentenced him without a trial. He had lost weight, become gaunt, and looked like a ghost. Sometimes he would come to Jessica's house and stand in the shade of the trees, not daring to approach, just staring at the windows until someone called the police. While people were searching for the dead man upstairs, deep underground, 40 minutes' drive from the city, Samantha Wells opened her eyes. There was no change between day and night here. Time was measured by the clicks of the ventilation timer and his visits. Her world had shrunk to a room measuring 3 by 4 meters. The walls were covered with plasterboard painted a warm beige color, a gruesome attempt to imitate comfort. There was a bed, a shelf with books, a table, and a bio-toilet behind a screen. And there was a chain, a 5-meter steel chain chained to her ankle, the other end of which was attached to a powerful fixture in the concrete floor. Samantha had changed. The girl who loved to rebel and seek adventure was gone. In her place was a woman whose will was compressed into a steel ball. For the first few months, she screamed, begged, and tried to break down the walls with a chair. In response, he simply turned off the lights and ventilation. For hours, for days. In complete darkness and stuffiness, suffocating from her own fear, she realized that rebellion meant death. Submission meant life. The door, as solid as a bank vault, made the characteristic sound of magnetic locks being unlocked. Samantha instantly sat up on the bed and smoothed her hair. She knew the rules. He entered, a figure in dark clothing. He never turned on the bright overhead light when he came in, leaving only the dim floor lamp in the corner to work. His face was always hidden, either by a ski mask or, as now, a deep hood and shadow. He did not speak in his own voice, using whispers or simple monosyllabic phrases. He was carrying a tray in his hands. The smell of roast chicken and mashed potatoes filled the stuffy air of the bunker. "Dinner," he whispered. It wasn't a suggestion. It was an order. He put the tray on the table and sat down in a chair in the darkest corner. It was their ritual. Family dinner. He loved to watch her eat. "Thank you," Samantha said quietly. She had learned to say it convincingly. She ate slowly, feeling his gaze on her. He didn't touch her. In the whole year, he had never hit her or raped her in the physical sense. His violence was much more sophisticated. He wanted to possess her soul. He wanted her to be happy here, with him. "Have you read today?" he asked from the shadows. "Yes, the book of poems you brought. I liked the one about the lake," she lied. "Read it to me." Samantha took the book, sat down on the floor. The chain allowed her to reach the living room area and began to read aloud. Her voice was even and soothing. She knew he liked that tone. She was Scheherazade, who bought herself another day of life every evening. "You do understand why you're here, don't you?" he suddenly asked, interrupting her reading. Samantha froze. It was a dangerous question. "Because it's dangerous out there," she said, reciting the memorized formula. "No one appreciates me out there. It's dirty and full of lies. Here, I'm safe. You protect me." A satisfied sigh came from the dark corner. "That's right. They don't deserve you, especially him, the one who yelled at you." Samantha knew he was talking about Tyler. The kidnapper was obsessed with the idea that he had saved her from the bad guy. "I'm glad I'm here," she said, staring straight into the darkness of the hood. "Really?" It was an Oscar-worthy lie, but inside she was feverishly counting. She had noticed that in recent weeks he had become less careful. Today he had forgotten to lock the second latch on the door right away. He was tired. He was losing his vigilance. At the same time, upstairs in the Wells house, the doorbell rang. Jessica, wrapped in a blanket, opened the door. Greg Miller was standing on the doorstep. He was holding bags from the supermarket. "I thought you might have forgotten to eat, Jess," he said with a soft, disarming smile. "Greg, you don't have to do this. You already spend so much time on me." "Come on, we're family." "Well, almost," he said, walking into the kitchen and beginning to unpack the groceries like a pro. "I made lasagna, my mom's recipe. Sam always said she loved Italian food, right?" Jessica sat down at the table, covering her face with her hands. "I can't believe it's been a year. The police say there's almost no chance. They want to close the case." Greg froze with the milk carton in his hand. For a split second, his face became hard and cold, but Jessica didn't see it. "The police are idiots," he said calmly, turning to her. "Holloway got hung up on Tyler and wasted time, but you mustn't lose hope." He came over and put his hands on her shoulders, gently massaging her tense muscles. "I feel like she's alive, Jess. I have a hunch. She's out there somewhere. Maybe she's even better off where she is now than in this cruel world where guys like Tyler can threaten her." "What are you talking about, Greg? How could she be better off?" Jessica looked up at him with tear-filled eyes. "I mean, if she's alive, then someone is taking care of her, feeding her, protecting her, in their own way." His words sounded strange, ambiguous, but Jessica was too broken to analyze them. She was just grateful that there was a living person in the house. "You're a saint, Greg. I don't know what I'd do without you." Greg smiled as he looked at the photo of Samantha on the refrigerator. "I'm just doing what I have to do. I promised to look after her at school. I'm still looking after her and you." Late that night, Greg returned to his home. He lived alone in a neat house in a quiet neighborhood. He went down to the basement, which served as his workshop, moved aside a heavy workbench, and opened a hidden trapdoor. Descending the stairs, he put on a balaclava. Samantha was awake in the bunker. She heard him come in. "I brought you dessert," he said, placing a piece of the same lasagna he had eaten with her mother an hour ago on the table. "Homemade." "Thank you," Samantha said. "Can I have a pencil? I want to draw you." It was a risk. A pencil is a weapon. The kidnapper paused. "You want to draw me?" "I want to draw the person who saved me. Please, I'll give it back when I'm done." He took a small pencil stub out of his pocket and threw it on the bed. "You have an hour, then the lights will go out." When the door closed behind him and the locks clicked, Samantha didn't start drawing. She crawled to the wall where, at the bottom of the bed, the drywall was slightly damp from condensation. She began to carefully pick at the plaster with a stylus, widening the microscopic crack she had found a month ago. She didn't give up. She was preparing. Behind the wall, she heard a dull rumble, the sound of his footsteps receding upward. She knew he was somewhere nearby, but she didn't know who he was. Upstairs, Greg Miller took off his balaclava, poured himself a glass of wine, and turned on the monitor, which showed a black and white image of a girl he thought was asleep. "Happy anniversary, Sam," he whispered, raising his glass. Another year of the perfect life. There were no clocks in the bunker, but Samantha had learned to tell the time by the rhythm of the ventilation pipe's vibrations. According to her calculations, it was now around 11 a.m. Greg should be at school, listening to teenagers' problems in his cozy office. This was her window of opportunity. For the past 2 months, every night when the lights went out, Samantha had worked on the anchor bolt that secured the chain to the concrete floor. Her tool was a stolen table knife, which she had managed to break off at the base of the handle and hide in the mattress. It was painstaking, agonizing work, rubbing her fingers raw as she turned the bolt a fraction of a millimeter, and in the morning, covering the cracks with a mixture of dust and breadcrumbs so that he wouldn't notice. Today, the bolt gave way. Samantha took a deep breath, her heart pounding so hard it felt like her ribs would crack. She pulled the chain. The metal plate separated from the floor with a quiet clang. She was free. For the first time in 365 days, she could take more than 3 steps. Samantha stood up, her legs trembling with weakness and adrenaline. She grabbed a heavy table lamp, the only weapon she had. She approached the massive door. It was impossible to open it from the inside. It had an electronic lock. But Samantha knew, she had overheard it months ago, that when the power was cut off, magnetic locks went into emergency mode and opened mechanically. The plan was simple and desperate. Smash the fire alarm sensor on the ceiling with the lamp. The system should de-energize the sector. She swung. At that moment, the electronic code panel behind the door beeped. Samantha froze, the lamp suspended in midair. The blood drained from her face. It was impossible. He never came at this time. The sound of the bolt sliding back sounded like a gunshot. The door began to slowly open inward. Greg Miller stood in the doorway. He wasn't wearing a mask. He was holding a box of cake. He wanted to have a celebratory dinner in honor of the anniversary of their new life, so he had taken time off work, citing a migraine. He saw Samantha. He saw the chain lying on the floor like a snake. He saw the lamp raised to strike. And he saw her eyes. They did not contain the submissiveness he had nurtured for a whole year. They contained pure, unadulterated hatred. The box of cake fell to the floor. "Sam?" His voice trembled. "What are you doing?" The illusion crumbled to dust. The whole world he had built in his sick mind, a world where he was the savior and she was the grateful ward, disappeared. Standing before him was not his daughter. Standing before him was an enemy, a witness, a threat. "Let me go," Samantha screamed, rushing for the exit. She knew she had nothing to lose. She swung the lamp, aiming for his head. Greg caught her arm. He was stronger, much stronger. The physical superiority of a grown man against an exhausted girl. He pushed her back into the room. Samantha fell onto the bed, but immediately jumped up, scratching his face with her nails. "You lied! You lied to me all this time!" she shouted. "Mr. Miller, please let me go." That address, Mr. Miller, was a trigger. It brought him back to reality. If she got out of here, his life would be over. Prison, shame, loss of reputation. His mother would find out. Everyone would find out. The panic in Greg's eyes gave way to icy determination. "You ruined everything, Samantha," he hissed. "We could have been happy. I saved you from the filth, and you're just like them. Ungrateful." He lunged at her, knocking her to the ground. His hands closed around her throat. It wasn't cinematic. There were no dramatic lines. There was only the crude, ugly mechanics of death. Samantha gasped, her fingers frantically scratching at his hands, trying to loosen his grip. She looked into his eyes, and in her last seconds, she saw not a monster, but a pathetic, frightened little man. Greg squeezed his fingers tighter and tighter, his face reddening with tension. Only one thought raced through his mind. Silence. I need silence. 2 minutes later, Samantha's body went limp. Her arms fell to her sides. Greg didn't let go of her right away. He sat astride the corpse, breathing heavily, staring at the motionless face of the girl he thought he loved. The room was completely silent. Only the hum of the ventilation system could be heard. Greg stood up, dusting off his pants. He was shaking. "You made me do it," he said to the emptiness. He looked at his hands. There was a deep scratch from her nails on his wrist. A piece of her t-shirt was stuck under his fingernails. He had to leave, right away. In a panic, he began to gather up the traces of his presence. He took the box of cake. He picked up the lamp. But in his haste, he didn't notice that a small object had fallen out of his jacket's inside pocket while he was struggling with her, his honorary teacher school badge, which he always carried with him as a talisman. The badge rolled under the bed, into the shadows, where Samantha hid her escape tools. Greg turned off the light, left the bunker, and locked the heavy door. This time for good. 48 hours had passed. The Burbank Industrial Zone lived its own life, hidden from the eyes of ordinary people. Two guys, Alex and Ben, who called themselves urban explorers or diggers, made their way into the old warehouses through the storm drains. They were looking for locations for graffiti and thrills. "Dude, it stinks like something died in here," Ben said, adjusting his respirator. "It's a sewer. It always stinks here," Alex shrugged, shining a powerful flashlight on the walls. They stumbled upon a strange structure in the far branch of the tunnel. The concrete wall looked newer than the rest, and behind a pile of construction debris, a metal door disguised as a rusty shield was visible. "Look, this isn't a city utility. It's too well made," Alex said, moving closer. The lock was complex, but the hinges were rusted from the dampness of the tunnel, or the door had been installed by hand. Driven by curiosity, the boys used a crowbar. When the door gave way, a smell hit them from the crack. It wasn't the smell of sewage. It was a sweet, nauseating smell of decay mixed with the smell of stale air. The boys looked inside, shining their flashlights. The beam caught a bed, a woman's shoe, and a pale hand hanging off the edge of the mattress. "Oh my God," Ben whispered, backing away. "Alex, call the cops. Quick." An hour later, the area was cordoned off with yellow tape. Blue and red flashing lights reflected in the puddles. Detective Marcus Holloway crawled under the tape, pulling on latex gloves. His face was gray. He already knew who they had found. He descended into the bunker behind the forensic team. The air was heavy. Photographers were taking pictures. Camera flashes lit up the small, eerie room, which resembled a dollhouse. Holloway approached the bed. It was her, Samantha Wells. A year of hope, a year of searching, a year of her mother's prayers. It all ended here, in a concrete box underground. There were distinct bruises on her neck, marks of strangulation. She hadn't died of hunger or thirst. She had been killed. Recently. Holloway felt a cold rage boiling up inside him. This was no longer a missing persons case. "Mark, look at this," the forensic scientist called to him, pointing to the floor. "The chain is unscrewed. She almost got out." Holloway clenched his fists. She fought to the end. She was so close. "Seal everything here," he commanded in a voice that brooked no argument. "Every inch. The killer was here a couple of days ago." He panicked. He must have left traces. "Find me something. I want to know who did this, and I want to see him in a cell before sunset." Jessica Wells was told the news at 3 a.m. She didn't scream. She just slid down the wall in the hallway and stared at a single point. At that moment, part of her died too. Greg Miller sat next to her, holding her hand and pretending to mourn, carefully hiding his scratched wrist under the long sleeve of his shirt. But the game was over. The body had been found. The hunt for the beast had begun. Time flows differently underground. Here, in the concrete belly of a bunker, hidden on the outskirts of Burbank, it froze at the moment Samantha's heart stopped. The air was heavy, stale, saturated with the smell of ozone from the generators, the chemical reagents of the forensic scientists, and that faint Swedish stench of death that Detective Marcus Holloway had learned to recognize without fail during his 20 years on the homicide squad. Marcus stood in the middle of the room that had served as a prison for an 18-year-old girl for a whole year. This place sent a chill down his spine, not because of its squalor, but because of its monstrous, distorted normality. The walls were neatly painted in a warm beige color. Books lined the shelves: classical literature, photography albums, art textbooks. A pile of clean clothes lay on the table. "This isn't a dungeon," Holloway said quietly, running his hand over the spines of the books. "It's a dollhouse." He didn't want to torture her. He wanted to play with her. The police lieutenant standing nearby nodded grimly. Whoever built this had money and knowledge: ventilation, soundproofing, a system of airlocks. This isn't the work of our pizza delivery guy. Tyler Banks could barely afford to change the oil in his car, let alone pour concrete 3 meters deep. The forensic team worked silently, methodically covering every inch of the surface with fingerprint powder. The killer had been careful. He had wiped away his fingerprints and taken any personal items that could give him away. But Holloway knew that panic was a poor ally for the perfect crime. After a struggle, after a murder, when adrenaline is pumping through your temples and reality is crumbling, a person inevitably makes a mistake. "Detective!" The voice of the young expert working at the head of the bed rang out in the confined space. "We've got something." Marcus moved closer, trying not to step on the scattered powder. The guy in the white protective suit shone a narrow beam of ultraviolet light into the gap between the mattress and the wall. With tweezers, he carefully removed a small metal object that glinted in the light of the halogen lamps. It was an enamel badge, a small silver owl sitting on an open book. Holloway held the plastic bag containing the evidence up to his eyes. On the back was a thin, barely noticeable engraving: "For dedication to the cause, Silver Lake High, 2010. Blood rushed to the detective's temples. The puzzle that had been unsolved for a year suddenly clicked into place, forming a frightening but clear picture. This pin could not have belonged to Samantha. It was the property of an adult, an employee. Something that could have been torn from a jacket lapel in a desperate struggle for life. "Check the lists of Silver Lake High School teachers who received awards for the 10th year, Holloway commanded, his voice as hard and cold as steel handcuffs. "And urgently check Greg Miller's alibi for the day before yesterday, not the day of the disappearance, but the day of the murder." 3 hours later, the police station was filled with that special electrified atmosphere that precedes a major arrest. The photograph of Tyler Banks, which had hung on the suspect board for a year, was removed. In its place, Holloway pinned a picture of Greg Miller, a respected school counselor, friend of the family, a man with an impeccable reputation and a gentle smile. The facts fell into place, mercilessly destroying the mask of virtue. The land where the bunker was located formerly belonged to a long-closed company, but a chain of bank transactions through dummy accounts led to the inheritance of Greg's father, a civil engineer. A DNA sample secretly taken from a paper cup that Greg had left on the site a month ago when he came just to get the news gave a preliminary match with the epithelium found under the fingernails of the murdered Samantha. The probability of error was 1 in a billion. And finally, the alibi. On Thursday, the day the coroner concluded death occurred, Greg Miller left school at 10:30 a.m., citing a severe migraine. His phone was turned off for the next 5 hours. "He's at Jessica's right now," the officer on duty said, putting down the phone. "Her neighbor saw his car at the Wells house. He arrived half an hour ago." Holloway felt a chill run down his spine. The killer was there, in the house of his victim's mother, drinking her tea, holding her hand, looking into her eyes. "SWAT team, get ready," the detective commanded, checking his service weapon. "No sirens. Be quiet. We're taking him warm. If he realizes we're coming, he could do anything. A soft, subdued light burned in Jessica Wells' house. The kitchen was quiet, only the rhythmic ticking of the wall clock breaking the oppressive silence. Jessica sat at the table, clutching a cup of cold tea with both hands. She stared at a single point, her face gaunt and gray with grief that no medication could dull. Greg sat next to her, his chair pulled up close. He spoke softly, his voice enveloping, hypnotic. He gently stroked her shoulder, feigning the utmost sympathy. "You have to let her go, Jess. She's not in pain now. This world was too dirty and cruel for a soul as pure as Sam's. Maybe this is a kind of liberation." "Why did they kill her, Greg?" Jessica whispered, without looking up. There was no life in her voice. "Who could have done this? Why?" "Evil doesn't always have a logic," he replied philosophically, adjusting the cuffs of his immaculately ironed long-sleeve shirt. "But you're not alone. I'll always be here. I promise to replace the support you've lost. We'll get through this together." His voice sounded so sincere that he himself seemed to believe it. But Jessica suddenly froze. Her gaze accidentally slipped over Greg's arm when his shirt sleeve rode up slightly with the movement. There, on the pale skin of his wrist, were deep, inflamed scratches, fresh crimson stripes, like the marks left by the claws of a small animal desperately fighting for its life. Something clicked in Jessica's mind. The puzzle fell into place instantly, terrifying and unbelievable. His sudden departure from work on Thursday, his strange remarks about Samantha being better off there, his obsessive desire to be close to her, and these scratches. At that moment, the front door flew off its hinges from a powerful battering ram. The sound was deafening, like an explosion. "Police! Everyone stay where you are! Hands on the table!" The kitchen was instantly filled with people in heavy bulletproof vests with weapons at the ready. Greg flinched, his face contorted with animal fear, instantly replacing the mask of a noble comforter. Jessica jumped up, knocking over her chair. She looked at the police who had burst into her house, then at Greg, at his scratched arm, which he was now trying in vain to cover. And in her eyes, horror gave way to icy understanding. "It was you!" she gasped, retreating to the wall as if she had seen a demon. "You were there. You killed her." Greg slowly raised his hands. Detective Holloway entered the kitchen, holding his gun low but ready to fire. He approached Miller closely. There was no triumph in his gaze, only deep contempt. He jerked up the psychologist's sleeve, revealing the marks of Samantha's final struggle for all to see. "Gregory Miller, you are under arrest for the kidnapping and murder of Samantha Wells. You have the right to remain silent." Greg did not resist as the cold steel of the handcuffs snapped shut around his wrists. He just looked at Jessica with an expression of cold, arrogant disappointment, like a teacher looking at a negligent student. "I loved her more than you did," he threw at her. "I gave her a perfect year of her life." The interrogation room had no windows and was completely devoid of comfort. Gray walls, a metal table bolted to the floor, a mirrored glass behind which observers were hidden. Greg sat opposite Holloway. He tried to regain his composure by straightening his back and folding his arms, but a nervous twitch under his eye betrayed his state. "Did you find the badge?" he asked first, with a slight crooked smile. "Careless of me. Emotions, you know." "We found more than just the badge, Greg," Holloway replied wearily, laying out photos from the bunker on the table. "We found a chain. We found the surveillance footage you kept on an encrypted drive in your basement. We saw how she lived this past year. She lived beautifully." Greg raised his voice for the first time, his eyes flashing with fanatical intensity. "She read, she grew, she listened to classical music. I protected her from the filth of this city, from that idiot Tyler, from her mediocre fate, from a career that would have broken her. We were happy. I created a paradise for her." "Happy?" Holloway leaned forward, invading the killer's personal space. She spent 3 months loosening the mounting bolt with a butter knife, rubbing her fingers raw. She hated you with every fiber of her being. The moment you strangled her, she looked into your eyes, not with love, but with disgust and horror. You didn't kill her to save her. You killed her because your doll broke, because she refused to play by your rules and almost ran away. You're not a savior, Greg. You're a nobody who stole someone else's life for the sake of your ego. The words hit harder than any physical blow. The mask of the Messiah cracked and crumbled. Greg slumped in his chair as if the air had been let out of him. His face became empty, old, and pitiful. "She ruined everything," he whispered, staring at the table with a glazed look. "She should have just been grateful." The trial was quick and ruthless. The evidence was irrefutable. The lawyer tried to build a defense based on insanity, but the psychiatric evaluation found Miller sane, although it diagnosed him with severe narcissistic personality disorder. The judge's sentence sounded like a hammer blow: life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. In the courtroom, as the verdict was read, Greg drew something in his notebook, completely ignoring Samantha's mother's sobs and the curses flying at his back. The story ended where it began, in the world of art that Samantha loved so much. 6 months later, in the warm spring of 2015, an exhibition opened in a small art gallery in downtown Los Angeles. Jessica Wells, who had aged a decade but found the strength to live on for the sake of her daughter's memory, organized a posthumous exhibition of Samantha's works.